Hi folks, Ron from RJM Music here once again with another video about our Mini Effect Gizmo X audio loop switcher. This one specifically we're going to talk about stereo connections and split mono connections. In our previous videos, which if you haven't seen I recommend you take a look at, we talked about basic mono connections for the Mini Effect Gizmo out of the box. It's set up for 6 mono effects, and you can plug your effects straight in and send it MIDI commands and it'll switch for you. But what if you have stereo effects? All 6 loops, the input, the output, the buffer, everything in the Mini Effect Gizmo is stereo capable using TRS plugs, or the kind of plugs that you would have on on Pro headphones. And so with some settings and with some special cables, you can connect your stereo effects to the Mini Effect Gizmo. One of the main things you need is the right cables, and these are called insert cables or stereo Y cables. And we've got a couple examples here. This is kind of an off-the-shelf music store type, and this is a custom-made one. And basically, we've got one plug on the end that plugs into the Mini Effect Gizmo, and that one has a TRS or stereo connector, and you can tell these because they have this sort of divided into 3 sections: a tip, and then with a insulator, a ring, which is the middle one, and then the sleeve is the big one, and that's sort of the ground. And this is sort of what we use for a stereo connection on the Mini Effect Gizmo, and that splits on the other side to 2 plugs that are designed to go to your left and right plugs, or left and right jacks on your effect. On a cable like this, the cables are actually labeled tip and ring, which means that this one is connected to the tip on this side, and this one is connected to the ring on this side. The convention that we use always in our products is that the tip is the left side of the stereo and the ring is the right side. And so with the other cables, the off-the-shelf cable here, we have basically the same arrangement. The difference is that the red plug is the ring, and that's kind of the mnemonic you can use, is the red is the ring, and it's also the right side. So you can choose either one of these cables, and you'll be fine. So you'll need 2 of these cables per pedal. One of them will go from the send of the Mini Effect Gizmo to the inputs, the left and right inputs of the pedal, and then the other one will go from the return of the Mini Effect Gizmo to the left and right outputs of the pedal. We also do support pedals that have mono input and stereo outputs, and in that case you would use a standard mono cable from the Mini Effect Gizmo to the pedal input, and then use the insert cable to go from the stereo outputs of the pedal back to the Mini Effect Gizmo return. I should also mention that if you have for your stereo output and if you have a stereo input, you'll also need insert cables to split those or combine those, to go from the TRS jacks on the Mini Effect Gizmo to the probable individual left and right jacks that you have on your other devices. So once you've got the cabling figured out, the next thing is you have to do the settings to match. It's very important that the settings in the Mini Effect Gizmo match the cabling that you use. And looking here in the Mini Effect Gizmo editor, you can see that each loop has a stereo send and stereo return setting. And just make sure that, for anything you've got an insert cable plugged into, that you also have the stereo setting set accordingly. Otherwise, you may end up with some audio problems if you don't. An important note is that the Mini Effect Gizmo does do some mono to stereo and stereo to mono conversion. So if you have, for example, 3 mono loops followed by 3 stereo loops, it'll take the mono signal and convert it to pseudo stereo by just taking that mono signal and putting it on both the left and the right sides of the the input of the first stereo pedal. It will do stereo to mono, but not as well. Basically, it will take just the left side of a stereo loop and then pass that to a mono loop if it follows it. And generally you don't want to do that. Generally you want to have your mono pedals up front and your stereo pedals afterwards. So that's all there is to stereo connections. But there's something else you can do. Because we have an analog switching matrix in the Mini Effect Gizmo X, we can do some other cool tricks. And that particular trick is called split mono. So what if we were to, instead of connecting these insert cables to left and right, we can actually connect them to pedal 1 and pedal 2, which is a pretty cool trick indeed. Okay, I just did a quick wiring job here, and I've connected 2 pedals to loop 1. Using the same insert cables I was showing before, and I used 2 different types to hopefully make it a little easier to identify which one is which. I connected the loop 1 send. The tip goes to the first pedal's input, and the ring goes to the second pedal's input. And then from the return, I use the other type of cable, and the tip goes to the first pedal's output, and the ring goes to the second pedal's output. And this gives us, instead of a stereo connection, we have 2 different pedals that can be switched independently. To enable this, we have to go into the editor and check the split mono checkbox here. And what that does is, not only does it disable the stereo settings, because you can't do both at the same time, it also creates an additional loop. If looking down at the end, there's a loop 7 box now, and so now we've created loop 7. So we have our first 6 loops, but then the second half, the ring connections on loop 1, become an additional loop, and this one can be managed in the editor like any other loop. You can't access these additional loops from the front panel. There are only 6 loop buttons, but you can access them through MIDI, and you can access them through the editor just like any other loop. And so as a result, if you wire things this way, you can have actually 12 mono pedals in the Mini Effect Gizmo if you split every one of the 6 loops. And that's all there is for today. If you have questions, feel free to post below, and keep on the lookout for new videos. Thanks.